to another episode of the Failed Blockbusters. Technically,
Technically, uh, that's our live special. In
yeah,
honor of the 50th anniversary of Saturday Night Live, we are doing a live episode of Failed Blockbuster. And you're not going to believe how chaotic it was behind the scenes in the build up to our first live episode of the Failed Blockbusters. That people, they were still laying bricks where they were going to stand, where we were going to stand to record this. And Milton Berle was being a dick. And it was just so chaotic, everyone. But we're here now.
yeah. I'm your host, Diego Crespo. With me, as always, is my co-host, Macaringo.
That's me.
Yeah. So this is sort of an announcement episode. It's a catch-up episode, and it's a what's to come episode. A little bit. We have. I'll just say this is my Kevin Feige at Comic-Con announcement that the Failed Blockbusters Fantasy Edition is over. We're ending it. A little because of recent news has come out about someone who. Look, we were going to do Stardust. Stardust.
Yeah. Let me explain the like 17 different things that happened that led to this being the spot we're in. We had like a bunch more we wanted to do, but we kept like pushing back, being like, we got time. What's going to happen? And then Diego's entire state burned down, and then he got the flu like 16 times in a row.
That was brutal.
Yeah,
get your flu shots, kids.
And then my car imploded. 3 times my car imploded. The guys were insistent. I was live texting Diego through as his state was burning down. I was texting him what the goings on at my local mechanic and dealership, and stuff that maybe I can't repeat right now in case this leads to any sort of legal action. But hey, we have some. And then the kicker on top of it was that we foolishly put Stardust on the list, even though there were a little bit of rumblings about Neil Gaiman beforehand, and we were kind of gonna. I assumed we would touch on that in the episode, being like Neil Gaiman might be a bit of a weirdo, but we don't know totally yet. And then it got significantly worse, and we didn't know what to do for a minute. So now we're here. But
yeah, I'm just sharing the links right now so people will hop into the chat.
Yeah, share it on Blue Sky, you fuck, because I am not on the Twitter anymore, really.
Yeah. Well, I got the old Twitter link up now. I'm moving over to Blue Sky, and I have to make a Blue Sky account for the episodes and for the podcast in general. So
yeah,
I will work on that. Until then, it's gonna go up on just my regular account. So
all right,
just so everyone knows. But yeah, so Failed Fantasy Blockbusters are done. We will wrap up. We didn't want to like commit to the next season direction and how we're going to do that. We've definitely had ideas, and there's definitely one idea I really want to commit to. And I think this would be a good year for it. But we will wrap up the Failed Blockbusters with the still unreleased episode of the Warcraft retrospective, and then
I forgot that still isn't out.
Yeah, because at first I was like, well, hold on until we finish this up, and then the gaming news was just like, it's so horrific, very well reported, but so horrific that it's like we just really can't touch that, nor should anyone at this point. But we're gonna do a live reaction viewing commentary, I guess, of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, which are the opposite of Failed Blockbusters.
Yeah, we're just gonna do 12 hours. We're gonna see if we go insane watching 12 hours of Lord of the Rings.
Well, it's really like 13 and a half.
Yeah, well, isn't it like it's both longer and shorter than you think because of the credits? Like the credits add like an insane amount onto, because they have to list like every special effects person that worked on it. So I remember looking up, because it's like it is something like 20 minutes of credits on one of them, I think, on one of the extended editions.
That sounds like Return of the King.
Yeah.
That's definitely that one. Yeah. Should I, since we're just here, should I say what the other potential fantasy retrospectives were going to be? There's only a handful. It's not like a bunch.
Well, we'll probably talk about these movies during the Lord of the Rings things. There's no way we're going to be able to just talk Lord of the Rings for 12 hours. We're not that deep
Yeah.
into Lord of the Rings, but but yeah, you can talk about some of the other stuff that we had planned that went away for whatever reason.
Yeah. We were gonna do a bunch of Beauty and the Beast stuff. Just like how the Return to Oz was kind of like all Wizard of Oz stuff. Um, we were gonna talk about obviously the original Beauty and the Beast, the French film. But my like thesis on why we should do Beauty and the Beast, apart from the Cocteau film being like incredible, was that the live action movie, while making more money than God, is so terrible that people just kind of forget it happened.
Yeah.
I mean, all the live action Disney movies, that was kind of an excuse to talk about all of them.
Mm.
They have no like public recollection of any of these
Although, like,
movies.
it is also like one of those like to America things. But how much money has Mufasa made at this point? Like, it didn't like.
Mufasa is making money. It was
Yeah,
just
that's
slow, which is
but that's
crazy.
insane. Like, because I haven't met a single person that has seen Mufasa. Like, it's not like like it's. Did you bother to see Mufasa? Like, I was kind of the
No,
one guy.
I will. I don't have Disney Plus right now. I
Yeah,
canceled it after Skeleton Crew, which I've told you is like actually good, like all the way through, which is
yeah,
crazy. Congrats
yeah.
on their third good show.
I'm still skeptical enough to not check it out
I mean,
immediately.
look,
But
it's you have good reason to be.
mhm,
I just want to address a comment really quickly. Hi Max, thanks for hopping
mhm,
in. Max said it was about a day or so away from texting to ask where the Warcraft episode
mhm.
was. Yes. I will put it out Monday morning, American time, because Max is in Netherlands time. So that'll be up before our Lord of the Rings live stream.
Yeah,
Um, but
sure. Why
yeah,
not?
I haven't
Put
seen
it out.
Mufasa. I will
Mhm.
I will watch it eventually because Barry Jenkins is he's just too good of a filmmaker. There's
Yeah,
got to be
I
something
can't
there.
imagine there's nothing there. I can't imagine there's nothing in the movie. Like, I feel like a lot of people were being a little too snobby about it, being like, "Why would you even bother?" And like, no one likes it, and no one, and it's like it's still Barry Jenkins. Like,
Yeah,
if the end result is that he got a good paycheck at the end of the day, I think Barry Jenkins maybe has earned a good getting paid for once a good paycheck, but
yeah.
we'll see.
I mean,
Um,
fucking. This was not planned. A planned part of the discussion today, but
none of
we're
our discussions are Diego. You never have to remind these people that we
yeah,
never
but like
plan
no, we
anything.
did go over a general structure for this catch up specifically like 30 minutes ago. But like today or like this week, Brady Corbet, the director of The Brutalist, came out and was like, yeah, I'm like I haven't gotten a paycheck in like 6 months because I finished the film, it released, now I'm on the award circuit, like, and they don't pay us for this. It's just me and my wife going around
Mhm.
the press circuits until award season is over, and then I try to get my next movie off the ground. And that's like crazy. And,
Yeah.
he's not the only person who's talked about being broke. Sean Baker was asked about like, oh, the iPhones that you shot Tangerine with. This is like 10 years ago at this point.
Mm,
He was like, oh, like, one of them's in like the Academy Museum. What happened to the other one? He's like, I had to sell it to make rent. And it's
mm.
like, okay, like Sean Baker, obviously much more
He's doing a little
independently
bit better
rooted.
now.
Yeah,
But
he's doing
yeah.
better now. He's making money now. But
Mhm.
that was only 10 years ago.
Mm.
He was like in his late 30s, early 40s,
Yeah.
and he wasn't able to make rent without
Yeah.
selling his equipment. Like that's not like acceptable,
Yeah.
you know. So,
That's
anyways,
the
my point being that yeah, Barry Jenkins wants to make uh some heavy duty bucks. He's more than in his right to. 'Cause at the end of the day,
yeah.
this is a job.
Mhm.
So
I'm
people
surprised
like
it
make money.
wasn't pushed more as like a Barry Jenkins thing. Like, you would think Disney was like that was the point to like try and get such a name attached to it, but then like they didn't seem to. But also, I don't know. I don't know what's going on over there anymore. Nothing they're doing seems to make any sense.
No.
How's fucking Captain America doing? 'Cause I saw like
The
opened
first weekend
well.
was like better than expected. I remember it was
Uh,
like it's looking like
yeah.
70, 80, maybe 90 million, and it made like 110, I think.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, my
yeah,
thing says it's already made 198 million
yeah.
so far. I think that might just be the fact that it's been a minute since there's been a Marvel movie.
Mhm.
But it's also a movie that no one seems happy with either.
Yeah,
So
I've heard like the most like aggressive defense of the movie is that it's like, no, it's not that bad. It's actually pretty good. And it's like,
mm,
okay, well, I probably won't end up liking it, and it sucks that I even have to think about it this way. Anyone has to think about it this way because there are just like so many bad faith campaigns because Anthony Mackie's a black Captain America,
mm,
you
mm.
know, that I look fuck Marvel, but like I do kind of hope he is a success within this movie, you know? And it looks
No,
like
it's
people, even the criticism is like, no, but he deserves better as an actor,
yeah. I
which
think
is
that's
nice.
been the shift. I think it's just changed where now, like you can't get away with just like giving, like being like we got a black Captain America now. Like it's like, well, no, the movie's got to be good too. Like I think people have finally turned that
Hmm.
corner. And yeah, but still, it's shocking that people are. Like I said, I think people just needed a Marvel movie after. When
Yeah.
was the last one released before that?
It was Deadpool and Wolverine. And then before that, it was The
But
Marvels, which was also
I'm
poorly
not gonna.
received.
I'm not gonna count Deadpool and Wolverine because that's not a movie. Like that.
Well, it's
It
also like
it
it's a special event. It's
it's
Deadpool
it
entering the MCU.
just stated kind of like in another sphere for the MCU, and then it's basically just a if a product launch was a movie, and
Mhm.
so I don't really consider it like it's as someone who's been paying attention to what Gen Z is really into in terms of like participation in media online. It's basically just watching a live stream, somewhat like this, and just sending heart emojis over and over again when a song gets played that you liked. Uh, so yeah, weird time for the culture. All as always, it seems we just keep saying that. So
Everything is so strange.
mhm.
David Rose commented and said, "Too many cooks in the kitchen. They should just have the two screenwriters because I guess it's one of those movies that had like more screenwriters than like producers on it, basically, which is maybe not always a great sign."
I'm gonna go out on a limb and suggest they were not entirely certain what political climate the movie was going to be released in, so they had to keep rewriting it with different people with different points of view in order to make it safe in massive quotes.
That's what I was thinking too.
I'm
Like,
gonna I'm gonna assume that that's what was going on there.
yeah,
Uh,
because I've seen some critics who reviewed the film more positively latch onto the idea that like, oh, it's President Red Hulk, just like
mm,
there's a certain
mm,
president in office right now who has a certain shade of magenta or orange or red to him as
mhm.
well, and like I like whatever, like that's very liberal brained.
Yeah.
Like we're ultimately on the same side, so if you're a little annoying with that, like that's fine. But I willing to bet it's not that deep in the movie because I've also heard lots of criticism that like, oh, they made a Captain America political thriller without a political point of view. And like, look, I haven't
Yeah.
seen the movie, but I'm willing to believe that because they
Mm.
already did that before.
Well, like I'm saying, I'm betting the gestation was that, and the idea was that we are now post this person, so it's fair game to caricature him in some way in a film, and only to slowly over the course of production realize that, oh no, we have not closed the door on that problem, and now we don't know what to do as a movie. So we might as well take no position, which works out great for everyone involved.
Yeah,
Um,
this is the last thing on this because we whatever. I'm sure we'll talk about superhero bullshit in the future, like we always do. But
mhm.
I will say on a positive note, I know some people were like, if they want to do a political thriller, they shouldn't put the Red Hulk in it. I fuck that. I'm sorry. If you're making a superhero movie in the Marvel universe and you have access to like all these weird comic book characters, I am all for Sam Wilson's Captain America, like Falcon punching President Red Hulk. I think that's a
Mhm.
very cool idea. Now, I'm sure that idea is much cooler in my head than it would be in the movie, but it's something, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, no, like I'll say the trailers intrigued me, but I'm just at a point with Marvel where I'm like, I'm waiting for the reviews, and the reviews were kind of like, it's bad. So I'm like, okay, gonna miss that one then. So because they're not a foundational part of my time these days.
Yeah, the last one I saw in theaters, Guardians 3. The last one before that, Doctor Strange, and I haven't caught up with the ones in between, and then
Yeah,
I don't miss it. So
or any of the shows. I can't
yeah,
think
I've
of the
never
last
been able to finish the
Marvel.
shows. I'm gonna give Daredevil a shot,
Mhm.
but that's just because I think when that show was good, it was like really fucking good. And season 3, I got to do something on season 3 at some point because it's like
Hmm.
maybe I'll do like a rewatch show or something, or like post, because it's fucking amazing. That
Well,
season's so good.
we've never ever on this podcast used another movie as an excuse to talk about something completely unrelated to that movie. Just
Yeah, that's
and
true.
it's not like there's a failed Daredevil movie out there that we could cover one day in a series that we could maybe spend 5 minutes on, because the reason it fails are incredibly boring, and then we could talk about stuff we actually want to talk about for the majority of the episode.
Yeah.
But hey, much like we're doing now at the end of the failed fantasy series. What else have you seen recently, Diego?
Oh, nice segue. So if you follow me on Letterboxd, I saw Den of Thieves 2, Pantera, back in January. That was the last
Hey.
movie I saw before I got deathly ill with the flu. And I remember like the following day, I was like, I feel weird. I'm like really tired. I
Mm.
don't know why. I hope I didn't get COVID. And I took a couple tests that day and then the day after when I was like dying. But the memory of Den of Thieves 2 Pantera was so powerful. It helped me survive. Because it's like staring into the eyes of God for 2 hours and 20 minutes.
All
And
right.
it's dudes truly do rock with
All
that
right.
movie.
All right.
Um,
I'm not sure I'm in the mood for a dudes rock movie right now,
okay.
unfortunately, considering where I'm at. But
Understandable, but if you love like Gerard Butler, you should watch that movie
all right.
because
I mean, I like
it's his
Gerard
best
Butler.
performance.
Okay, yeah, it's on a list of like a million movies to get to eventually, but I have not been watching too many recent things. I think I've watched two things. No joke. I think I've watched two things that have been released this year so far,
Hmm.
as in the year 2025, and I gave both of them half a star on Letterboxd. So,
Do you want to
uh,
say what those are? Because I'm gonna
uh,
shit on something else in a minute.
yeah. The first I just want to say is Netflix put out a new OJ documentary, OJ Simpson murders documentary.
I'm sure
And
they did.
I wrote like a psychotic person. I get because I was like up at 3 a.m. doing something else because my sleep schedule's been all fucked up, and I needed background noise, and it infuriated me so much. Mark Furman is essentially the protagonist of the documentary, which is an insane choice to make. But it's the thing I said at the end of my review, which is basically all you need to know, is that this feels like OJ Made in America, the incredible documentary, arguably the greatest true crime documentary of the last 10 years. It feels like OJ Made in
That's not
America.
arguable, by the way. Sorry, I just need
I,
to say that.
I don't know. Maybe there's something I'm missing that I don't know about. In terms of the standard structured true crime documentary, OJ Made in America is probably untouchable in that sense. This new one, which is called, what the fuck was it called? American Manhunt, OJ Simpson. I put it on because I kind of just thought it was going to be about the Bronco chase, which I'm like, I can watch something that's just about that. Like, that's interesting enough.
Mhm.
But I said it feels like Made in America summarized by Chat GPT. That's
Jesus
what
Christ.
it's just awful and inexplicably directed with like they're doing like Evil Dead style zoom ins on like witnesses as they introduce them. It was one of the worst directed things I think I've ever seen, and I'm at this point where I'm like, someone's got to say something not about the ethics of truth. Like, we're far beyond discussions about the ethics of true crime anymore, and just talk about how bad these things are being made, because it is one of the worst made things I think I've ever seen, in terms of a documentary. The other was an actual film, kinda. It maybe did not start that way, which was a Star Trek section 31, the Michelle Yeoh Star Trek starring vehicle, which I kind of was just which I had no expectations to be good, but I do kind of like evil Michelle Yeoh from the alternate universe. It's she's undeniably charismatic, and it's one of those things where like, yeah, I'd become a fascist if she was the dictator. Like that'd be the easiest.
Don't
Like
say that.
what? I'm not. Am I wrong? But
No, but you can't say it.
but Section 31 is essentially like, what if the CIA was good? Star Trek is now at that point
We
where it's
already have
defending,
Tom Clancy stuff. Like we
yeah,
don't need that.
but now like Star Trek is at such a low point that they are like, the thing we introduced to be a direct criticism of the CIA and sort of post-imperialist world building that we do, nation building that the United States does. Now they are the protagonist, because ultimately, doesn't this idealism need something sinister to keep it held up? Don't we want them on that wall? Don't we need them on that wall? And it's not only is the ethics of it bad, but it's just one of the worst things I've ever seen. Like, it's not a movie. It's just a series of things happening that vaguely resemble motion.
Well, really quick, I shout out to people actually commenting on this. Thanks. Jack
Yes,
Godwin. Yeah.
I see all you guys.
Hello. Surprise. Thank you for hopping on, my friend. So we were both supposed to go to the Twin Peaks Festival this year, and Jack is still going. I am unable to because I'm looking for work and have had financial issues because it's been a rough start to the year. But
Can I
yeah.
ask, were you playing this before Lynch passed? Which is something
I
that's happened
was,
between
yeah,
now and the
yeah.
recording.
And then now I'm like extra bummed that I feel like it would have been really great to be able to go this year, but I
I don't
really
know if I
should
could.
be more careful financially.
I don't know if I could emotionally handle that. Like, I don't know if I am in a spot where I can handle such a thing. I was in. I think I've told this story. I was in a Goodwill the other day looking for cheap electronics, because that's what I do. And I'm just staring at like a shelf of just like TVs and VCRs and DVD players that people don't want anymore. And over the loudspeaker, Laura's theme from Twin Peaks just started playing. And I stared at the stuff for about 5 more minutes, and I'm like, I cannot emotionally handle this, right? Like, look, this staring at all this this crap with that playing in the background is doing something to my brain, and I had to flee the Goodwill. So
Yeah. I
yeah.
get it. Celebrity passings usually don't have a big effect on me. And Gene and I and our other friend, another Matt Curione, came on to do a farewell episode to David Lynch, and really proud of what we all did in that episode. But like, that was actually a big like
Yeah.
deal when he passed. That felt
But
like someone I knew passed away.
but is it something that I'm getting, like, because I'm so upset about everything happening in the world right now. I'm in magical thinking mode. There's something weird about it happening in connection to LA burning down. Like, there's something going on there with David Lynch's passing being so
Like
directly connected.
spiritually.
Yeah, like it feels like the universe saying something, like
Mm,
that's how that played out. So, but goddamn, as
yeah.
someone who I think, not in the Warcraft episode, but I think we roasted how many David Lynch films fell under the fantasy category when we were doing the Dragon Slayer episodes. So,
Oh
which
yeah, yeah. I think
aren't
so.
his fault. It's Letterboxd's fault. But
Yeah.
so.
Yeah, like sure, they're fantasy adjacent in the same way like The Conjuring or Insidious is fantasy
Yeah,
adjacent,
a lot of horror is fantasy adjacent, but
Yeah,
let's not really. So get your shit together, Letterbox.
yeah.
Uh,
Right. Jack said that they've timed the memorial for the first thing on Friday morning, which he can't get to in time, but he'll be there for other stuff like Ray Wise, who will be there, a Q&A at a RoboCop screening, which I did see and would have been awesome to go to. And then
He
Jack just
stopped.
mentioned
Yeah,
he stopped
yeah, he
smoking.
stops.
David Lynch stopped smoking, and then all this happened. Just saying.
I mean, what is the most existentially dread-inducing episode of Twin Peaks: The Return? It's those guys, the woodsmen, got a light. Got a
Yeah.
light. They're asking for a cigarette. See, there's something where Lynch was tapped into something in the universe that
Mm.
it's like he foresaw his own death or something. It's like Mark Twain being born when Halley's Comet passes and then dying when it came back. Like it is that
Yeah.
weird. Like
Yeah.
which another guy who was very tapped into what America was like, that there was something preternatural about how tapped into the American psyche they were in their era. I don't know. Don't know
No,
what that's.
you know what? In some ways, maybe not a 1-to-1 comparison, but David Lynch is just as like totemic as Mark Twain for
No,
American art.
no,
No.
100%. No,
Yeah.
it is something where, because I've been rewatching all his movies, obviously, as a result of like he understood something about America that fundamentally a lot of people don't, in terms of not what's going on under the surface without satirizing it, without trying to do a sort of ironic detachment that we often do about America's dark underbelly. And so it's something that will be sorely missed, but it feels like he gave us enough that it will be valuable 100 years from now still. So that's it's immortal in a certain way. So um, but man, it's just been Jesus Christ, just a lot going on.
Yeah. To
So
backtrack a little bit, Max hopped off, but he
mm,
said it because in Netherlands it's like fucking probably like 1 a.m. or something like that.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
What
so
are you doing here, Max? What are you
so shout
doing?
out Max. He's going to bed, but I'll see you soon for All Line, which is from Den of Thieves, and then specifically at Big Bad 3 this year, Glendale, California, August something if. Find out later. I forget which days in August it is, but be there or be square. Really excited to see everyone again. It was super fun last year. Um, Billy said the juice is loose. That's from your OJ documentary comments.
Yeah.
David Rose
All right.
mentioned The Shadow Strays on Netflix also, which is
All right,
a good
shout out to
movie.
that. I've heard good things. I just haven't seen it. But it another thing. Also, it does feel like there was something in terms of like balancing the universe in the deaths of David Lynch versus the recent death of O.J. Simpson, who also feels integral to America in some way.
In a bad way, but yes.
In a bad way. That's why O.J. Made America such an amazing documentary, because it is
Yeah.
like it is like Citizen Kane. It's an American story. Like you could not tell this in any other country of its time. Like it was invented by America. This arc of what happened with OJ, and him dying also within like a week or so of the release of the Beetlejuice 2 trailer that
Oh
has
yeah.
Beetlejuice saying the juice is loose. So there's something going on. Like I I'm just saying, people. Like
Last days of the Roman Empire, perhaps.
I don't want to get like dark like that, because I don't want to think of it in those terms. But maybe it's something that the look, if David Lynch's death was a response to OJ's death, it says something that the darkness had to go before the light went, which I think is ultimately a good thing.
Wow.
I'm just throwing that out there. Just saying that
Okay.
his work here was done and he returned to his home planet. So, but um,
Yeah, David Lynch went back to his home planet, and O.J. Simpson went to hell. Sorry.
no, OJ. What does happen to OJ other than hell? That's like funny to say, because it's not really funny to say OJ's in hell, because it's true.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
But
at the end of the day, hell is hell, and that's not very funny.
yeah, OJ is
Eternal
relegated
damnation.
to people are going to start forgetting who he is. Like the further removed we are from the OJ Simpson trial, it's going to be like this was a really important moment to pop culture, but you kind of had to be there for it. And
Mhm.
now that he's dead, it's gone. Like whereas, like I said, Lynch's work is immortal. No one's going to remember. People will remember that OJ was a murderer. They got away with it, and that's about it. And they're not going to remember that he was such a great football player that people still will have to bring him up in terms of his quality and stuff like that. Including fucking my city of Philadelphia still talks about how we could have drafted OJ Simpson but fucked it up. Like that, like even post murder, that people are like, Philly could have had OJ Simpson. Like we would still have like there was a moment where we would have rather had OJ in his era, knowing what would happen later. Like we still look back and regret not taking OJ Simpson, that it is not a blemish that we avoided him. So
Jesus Christ.
OJ and the Naked Gun could get him into heaven. No, because there's a lot of people associated with the Naked Gun. Like Leslie Nielsen got in, God bless him, but it's gonna he's gonna be stuck in the perpetual. The gag of him he keeps getting beat up as he tries to get through the gates of heaven, and it's Leslie Nielsen trying to help him in, but hurting him more advertently in weird ways. So that's where OJ is stuck perpetually now.
Jack mentioned that OJ's in the Phantom Zone, so here's another quick update on a rewatch. I've been rewatching Young Justice. When I was sick, especially, I breezed through those first 3 seasons. My opinion still stands. Season 3 peak. If you're tired of superhero shit, it's not going to change your mind, obviously. But if you still like it, like I'm just realizing, like I do just like this shit. When it's done well, and that seems rarer and rarer, and that's a very good show. And it's very well written, and the ensemble writing, especially, is what I kind of went back to. I'm trying to write something ensemble based, and it's very, very impressive. And also 26 episodes for 3 out of the 4 seasons, which is pretty good. That's proper television. Damn it, shouldn't be that fucking hard. Speaking of things that shouldn't be that fucking difficult, any aspiring filmmakers that come across this episode, I want you all to remember that when you have a camera, you have to use it with like intent and purpose, and you should generally, I understand we need coverage to see where things are going in the frame. You need to see where actors are moving within the scene. It wouldn't be crazy to suggest that you can even keep the one lens on. You don't have to change lenses. You should, for different emotional reasons and stuff like that. But you should, move it between like characters and conversation. You should, if things are a little intense, maybe you want like a close up to like compress the space, or like a telephoto lens, or you want something with purpose. Anything with purpose. I want to watch movies where it feels like human beings made decisions. And we were talking about Barry Jenkins doing like a paycheck job. I bet he didn't half-ass it. Maybe the movie doesn't work, but there's no way he just like called it quits in the middle of that. You know what I mean? I saw The Gorge, and it feels like someone quit before they even started.
I was waiting for the landing of what inspired this.
Thank you.
Diego was furiously texting me while watching The Gorge at how much he was not enjoying The Gorge. In that way, I get a lot where a movie it's not like the worst thing ever. Clearly, you weren't like feeling that way about it, but you were just frustrated that it looked like no one tried.
Yeah. Although I will say Sigourney Weaver has like a cameo role in it. She comes to fucking work. She's never been bad in anything ever. Even Miles Teller, who's like, I don't like him as an actor. Not terrible in the movie. And Anya Taylor-Joy, she's one of those performers who just has it. Like, she's not gonna miss a beat ever. Positives kind of stop there a little bit. Some cool monster designs in the third act.
Look, all right. Here's something though. I did not know this movie even existed until you texted me. Like, this was like, I'm just not tapped into what's coming out anymore. What is the premise of this film?
The Gorge is about 2 snipers that are hired by this covert operation to stand on opposite sides of this massive gorge in an undisclosed location and stop whatever's in it from coming out. So things are like, it's like a lull. They're not allowed to communicate with each other, right? Nothing really happens during the day. At night, there's some weird noises, but nothing they can't handle. And a lot of time passes, and these people are fucking bored, and so they start interacting across the way because they're both like conventionally attractive younger people. And there's like a sort of YA romance angle to it, and I did kind of like that. I'm not
With
gonna
Miles
lie.
Teller, though.
Yeah, no, yeah, he's wrong for the movie. I'm gonna give him a little credit because I didn't hate watching him through the entire thing, which is a big deal for me.
Yeah.
Because a
So
lot of people liked him in Top Gun too.
yeah,
A lot of people did.
a lot of people like Top Gun too.
I like Top Gun too, despite certain
Mhm.
limitations in the film.
Although,
But
hey,
yeah,
are you feeling a little vindicated? We're starting to feel rumblings of people being like, "Dead Reckoning 2 sucked." Actually,
yeah,
like, I mean, Part 1,
yeah. Thank
whatever
you,
it was.
Abby.
Yeah, yeah, but like,
Thank you so much.
I feel like more people are going that direction. So,
Yeah.
we'll stop feeling like crazy people very
Yeah.
soon.
Like I generally don't get upset at other people's opinions on the internet. Like I'll get maybe briefly like annoyed, but then I move on, right? I don't need to make a Twitter thread responding to a take. But I have been a little anxious when I see people being like, I don't know, Dead Reckoning, it's still top 3 in the franchise. And I'm like, is it?
Yeah.
Is it? To whom? But whatever. I don't know if The Gorge is worse than Dead Reckoning. It
Yeah,
might
well,
be.
the Gorge at least has a premise that seems interesting. But
I think
yeah,
I would like Dead Reckoning more
is there
if I
something?
saw a third act in it.
Yeah, so maybe that's what Final Reckoning, whatever the fuck it's
Yeah.
called,
Yeah.
is.
What that one I bet will be better.
I mean, it'll
They'll
have an
probably
ending.
do the impossible mission in there, which they just didn't do that last time. It's the title of the franchise.
So all right, so they go into the gorge.
They go into the gorge. But that's not supposed to happen. So because they're not supposed to go into the gorge, they're not
I
supposed to
don't know.
leave, they're not supposed to talk to each other.
I cannot adequately explain it, but like something about just how you describe it and how it looks, like just by like screenshots I've seen of the movie, I'm just like, I'm already bored and I'm not even watching the movie. Like it's
Yeah.
uh
Yeah,
whereas
Jack made a very incisive comment about beloved auteur Scott Derrickson. Jack or that was Drew, excuse me, Drew Hunter.
yeah,
Hi
Drew.
Drew. But Jack mentioned that the romance was the best bit. Spoilers for the gorge.
It's
uh
what I'm not watching this fucking
yeah,
movie.
Jack was having fun until they went into the gorge, and I kind of had the reverse where I liked the romance element, but I wasn't like into the movie. I was just like, I see how this could be fun, you know.
Is there something maybe in the air right now where someone that could get roped into a clandestine government job that involves guarding a border of some kind just isn't very appealing in the protagonists of a film, that subconsciously you were maybe not as invested in what they were doing as the movie expected you to be?
Subconsciously, I'm willing to bet that was a little bit of a guardrail for me.
Mhm.
To
Are
stick
you
with the
gonna
gorge border metaphors.
was there any like, did the gorge, was it trying to do anything like that in terms of like borders or stuff like that?
Um, you know what? Honestly, no. I read the script, the Blacklist script that was very popular. That got the movie made.
Mhm.
It is far more interesting than the movie. I wouldn't say it's like incredible, but it's like, oh, there's real character work in here, and not in the way the movie does. And I mentioned it in my letterbox. I texted you too, but
Mhm.
for the few people watching this, like there's the opening scene for Miles Teller's character, who I can't remember his name. He does the generic like Hollywood like post-traumatic stress, like wake up in the middle of the night in cold sweat, and then close up on the alarm clock. It's like 4 a.m. Then you follow him get out of bed, and then you follow him walk around his house and grabbing his car keys. You follow him out the door. You follow him get into the car. You follow him drive somewhere. You follow him park the car at the beach. You follow him walk onto the beach. Another angle where he sits down on the beach, and it takes like 5 minutes. It tells you nothing about him, obviously. And that's when I knew like I was in fucking trouble. Where this is just like, oh, this is like someone learning how to use a camera for the first time. And
But
I'm not
maybe
like a
it's
Scott Derrickson hater. but I was very disappointed because I was rooting for him to like, because he didn't write this. I think him and
Well,
his
it's
co-writer Cargill
yeah,
rewrote it clearly.
yeah.
But
What's going on there too? What's going on there?
hey,
But
look, they're successful. I wish them all the best. Everyone deserves to make a living.
I knew. Hey, look, I was following Cargyle back when he was fucking a film critic for
Yeah, me
Spill.
too. I
Like,
remember Spill.com,
yeah.
which is now double
So,
toasted, and I still really like those guys. I would
but also like
recommend.
doesn't like didn't like most of the Spill archive is like deleted. Like it's just gone now, right? Like
Yeah,
whoever owned it just took
I
it
think there's
down.
some people who uploaded episodes to
Yeah,
YouTube
you
and
can
stuff,
find.
but
Yeah, you can find some stuff, and if you want a window into what people were talking about for movies that were released 15 years ago, but if you're morbidly curious, but yeah, that's so. It's one of those things where, like, of course, I'm rooting for a guy like that, but also like I'm waiting for the one that works, I guess.
it wasn't this one.
That's a shame.
Yeah. There's like, I'll say I did perk up, and I texted you this too. Like when they finally fall into the gorge, because like okay, so they have like this date, right? They like Miles Teller has to like jerry rig something to cross the gorge and get there, and they're like flirting and stuff, right? And because it's like they're alone, like whatever. I can get on board with all of that better if it wasn't Miles Teller, but I digress. And then he's trying to make his way back, and then oh, the monsters are attacking, and then that causes like the line to break, and he falls in. Anya Taylor-Joy goes in to rescue him. They have to fight their way out of the gorge, and they uncover stuff in the gorge. And this is why, like, to go back to the point about like, oh, is it like about like a conservative idea about like border control or whatever, right? No, I would argue the film thankfully doesn't veer into that. It explicitly states like what causes like the gorge to become this weird environmental hazard is like mad science gone wrong. It's World War II Nazi science gone wrong. I can get on board with all of that. The movie just doesn't make it very exciting, and there's some cool monster designs, and then they shoot them, and every like step of the way of something that should have been really cool or intriguing or exciting, like there's a in the escape sequence from the gorge, they jerry rig like a jeep to like this mechanical tool. It's going to pull up the jeep back to the top of the gorge because they can't climb it. It's too big, right? I'm like, oh, okay, it's very video gamey, but like, oh, how fun! You know, now they have to like defend this little thing, like you're on like a rail shooter or something. I'm into that, and then it's just constantly like medium wide shots of them shooting stuff.
I gotta say,
And
I
it's
can feel the medium wide shots in your description with no visual
yeah,
aid. It's like when you describe it, it's like I'm just picturing a medium. Like it, this is the movie sounds like a medium wide shot in its
yeah,
description. Like it doesn't, it's not something where, you know, like sometimes you see a poster for like an 80s horror film and it's just like, the tomb or something, and it's like got like this really gnarly tomb on it, and you're like, how is this not like you're already on board? You're like there's something fucked up in that tomb. I can't wait to see it. Like there's something about the gorge in in every small element of it where I'm just like, yeah, that sucks. Like I should be the guy who's like at least morbidly curious, like, oh, what's in the gorge? I'm just like, I don't care. Like I can just
yeah.
already tell.
The
I think
titular
it's
gorge.
I think it is something about them being soldiers. I do think there's something boring about putting soldiers in a horror environment in the way that Scott Derrickson's film See No Evil or whatever the fuck. No, that's not what it's called. What's that one the Exorcist
Deliver
one
us
did?
from evil.
Deliver Us from Evil, where it's just
I
like
think you called it a pro-life film at one point.
it kind of is. There's a weird pro-life element to it that, like, if again, where I was like, maybe this is what the gorge, like, it, like, these are just unintentional things Scott Derrickson's doing, but it's like, it's just not fun watching cops in that scenario. Like,
Mhm.
whereas a detective, maybe, but like cops, no. Like, there's something not engaging about that. Like, I can already tell that doesn't work without seeing the movie. That like putting a soldier in that situation is not interesting.
Yeah,
Whereas I don't know,
but that's
like
not Derrickson. Derrickson didn't come up with that. That was in the
I
script. So
no,
I
no, I'm not.
give him a little leeway.
Whoever you want to blame, you can blame whoever you want. But like, it's it. I'm just saying that there's something fundamental about like is there a good? There's got to be an example that I'm not thinking of a good horror movie starring a soldier.
Jurassic World.
Like I said, there's got to be an example of good horror movie starring a soldier that I can't think of.
Is it just aliens? And it's really the supporting cast, you know?
But yeah, they're Space Marines, and B, Sigourney Weaver is the protagonist of that film. Like, so, like, yeah,
that's
soldier.
what I'm saying, though. So, like, maybe that's how you make it interesting. It's like you can have them in supporting roles because that's going to make the protagonist feel safe, and you have to undercut it. So then it's
with a very similar Gorge type setup, Annihilation of what's through this thing that like there's soldiers in that, right? But they are not the like, you know, like they are not the focus of the film. They're, in fact, most of them were dispatched fairly quickly. But there's like the idea that like, and it's like I was thinking with the cop one, like they're like obviously the good version of Deliver Us from Evil is Exorcist 3, but that's a detective. Yeah, the Gorge is just a bad series of sounds. Like there's something to that of just like it doesn't sound good. You know, like
Billy mentioned Dog Soldiers. I really like Dog Soldiers. I don't think it's as like super intense, but I think the movie is super fun.
It's fun, but also it's honestly more an action movie than a horror movie. Like it's one of those where whereas like he finds like it's kind of this really good dry run for The Descent, because The Descent is also an action movie but also delivers on the horror, like because by the end of that movie she turns into, and then look, just think of like how one hits and one clangs, like The Descent where you're like that sounds fucked up, like the Gorge and you're like nope. Like it's just there's something fundamental in it. Like I said, it's medium wide shots. I was seeing all that without you having to tell me that it's medium wide shots.
I'm getting a little frustrated because it's not the worst movie I've ever seen. I do genuinely believe that it is the worst directed genre movie like of this scale. It was totally more than like 50 million or something, right? Like it had a budget, maybe more, right? Because I think it's like Apple's big movie for this quarter, and Apple's pretty good about quality control. So I'm a little like shocked by this. They don't pump stuff out. They're more about quality than quantity.
That being said, it is kind of their January release. It's close enough to be their January release.
But January is like cool if you know where to look. This is
but
I think the great Vice Victus brought up a point that February is really like more January than like what people think, and I kind of agree with that, especially with this movie. But I'm getting frustrated because I'm like remembering like, well, that monster design was pretty cool, and they have like it is very Annihilation, like down to like the people looking like more like grassrooty monsters and stuff like that, right? And the humanoids look like shit, but they're like on horseback and they're like swinging around like swords and stuff like that, and the horses are all like mutated plant stuff too, and like I'm like super into that idea, but I just remember every scene in the movie that makes it look boring as shit. And there are these cool like spider designs, but they're like the human skull is like the abdomen of the mutant spider thing, right? And like the plant vines are like legs that make it look more like arachnid like. And I don't know, like I really liked that design. Someone should take that and put it somewhere else because it was cool.
It sounds like this is someone being like, let me take the pieces from The Thing, The Mist, and Annihilation and put them together, and it didn't work. So it just sounds bad without seeing it. Maybe I'll watch it and love it because I do love monster movies, but like I have no.
It takes a minute to get to the fucking monsters, and you're gonna be pissed because they're big. You know, you need like a big fucking reveal for the monsters. You obviously withhold them for a movie like this, and then once
good lord,
they're
it's over 2 hours long.
Is it? It feels it. I thought it was shorter.
It's 127 minutes, so like just over 2 hours. So
yeah, it feels that.
That's
if you do watch it, like the eventual reveal, like the full like, oh shit, it's going down. It's like bad, medium wide shot, you know. no grace, no money shot. That's the thing. There's no like money shot in this movie. And this is totally the type of movie where like the hero should look as fucking badass as
It's
possible.
what is
The
that
monster
with
should look scary, you know?
there is something weird with Scott Derrickson in that regard, where sometimes all he has is an arresting image. Like like the script doesn't work, the movie isn't that great, but like there is something kind of arresting in an image he created in the movie. Like I think Sinister is probably like the prime example of that, where there's like just some imagery in that movie that like if you don't like the film, it'll still stick with you. Or The Exorcism of Emily Rose. But like then there is stuff like The Gorge, or I'm thinking of Deliver Us from Evil, where it's just like nothing, like where it's remembered for being boring. Like, so I don't know
I mean, even
what's going
his
on.
Hellraiser and like that movie, like obviously got like fucked because it was a Weinstein
Yeah.
production.
Mhm.
So that one you can't even fully blame on him. I think like looking back on it, I haven't seen it in years, obviously, but his Doctor Strange, I think it's a good example of his strength and weaknesses, because there's moments in that movie where I'm like, that's pretty good. I
Yeah.
think it's a pretty strong third act. I think that's, hey, look at that image of him
That was
discovering how
that
small he
weird
is in the universe, you know?
that was that weird run of Marvel where like the third act was good. Like suddenly like everything else was kind of sucked, but then the third act would be like leave you on like a good, where it's now it feels like it's like the third acts are where all these movies are like running into problems, it sounds like, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So goddamn,
Yeah.
cinema is in a strange place. To get back to what you initially said about us discussing movies we did not end up getting to on the podcast, because we only mentioned that we didn't do Beauty and the Beast.
Oh yeah.
We also talked about doing Flesh and Blood, the Paul Verhoeven movie, his essential like more like a calling card for America. Like, yes, he had done a bunch of movies before then in Europe, but like nothing really in America by that point. And
Mhm.
Flesh and Blood was kind of him being like, you can give me actual budgets and I can make entertaining movies, but we didn't get to that.
No. I
I don't know.
mean,
I don't even know if it would have been that interesting to talk about. We kept talking about trying to find another movie to pair it with. And I think it was going to be paired with Stardust in our recording schedule. And that's partly what fucked things up. So
we
yeah,
talked about what was it, Lady Hawk?
Lady Hawk
The
was one where
Donner
we were
movie.
like, yeah, we talked about maybe like subbing in Lady Hawk,
And
just
then
because
didn't it make
we're,
money? That was the thing, right?
yeah, I think we
Yeah.
found out Lady Hawk made money, and then we were like, oh fuck. We're trying to think of like other eight, cause like we could have done like Excalibur or something, but that made money. Like there's a couple others like that. And then I guess while we're here, what's your opinion on the film Stardust? Since this will probably be the last time anyone talks about it.
I think it's really good. I think
Yeah,
it's I really like it. I think it's
it's the
Matthew
best
Vaughn's
movie
best movie.
that Matthew Vaughn
Um
has done, but unfortunately Matthew Vaughn doesn't exactly have a lot of competition in that
I still
regard.
like First Class quite a bit. I know a lot of people have dropped off it, and a lot of people have told me that they never liked it. Um and I definitely
That
see the
was one of
flaws
those
more than
movies.
ever, but
That was a movie where it felt like we were so happy that they weren't doing X-Men Origins Wolverine or Last Stand, because like those left such bad taste in people's mouths that there was like a like, oh, they actually remember how to make an X-Men movie type thing, even though it's still not very good, but it wasn't disastrous on the level of Last Stand or Origins.
the ensemble stuff is pretty weak, but the Charles and Eric stuff I think is so good in that movie that like looking back, I remember really loving it and being like, okay, this one's about them. The next one has to be about everyone in the X-Men. And then like
Mhm.
everyone died between movies. Hugh Jackman's back, baby. Let's fucking go. Bryan Singer's back. You guys loved him.
We
And
did at that moment. We were all happy when it was announced he was coming back.
yeah.
Like,
But I
it's
remember
just all,
even like in theaters for Days of Future Past, I was like, that kind of sucks. Everyone
yeah.
between the movies is dead. What the
That was a weird ass movie where it was just like, I I came out of it feeling like I had to like it. Like I didn't really enjoy watching it, but I kind of felt like I was in a position where I had to be like, that was good. And because it like felt like it was fixing something that had gone wrong. That being said, I did cry at the end of Days of Future Past.
There's
But
good stuff in it, but it's a bad
well,
movie.
it was one of those like where Jean Grey was back, and I was just like, oh my god. But
That's a
yeah,
great
man. So
moment, you
it
know?
is, but it's also like the rest of the movie is so bad.
Yeah.
So whatever. But so that was another. So yeah,
Yeah.
Stardust
So
kind of threw a
I
wrench
think
into
First
everything.
Class is still my favorite of those, and then to go back to Stardust, I think that's Matthew Vaughn's best movie by a lot.
Mhm.
He just makes Kingsman movies now, I guess. I don't know what that's about.
They keep giving him money, even though, again, I don't know a single human being who has seen a Kingsman movie sequel anyway.
Yeah.
So
It's they're rough. They're
why do
very rough.
people? Why do people do? Why? What is keeping them going?
I don't know. So originally he was gonna do Kingsman 3, but I guess he was like his big pitch to executives at Fox was like, I can build you like a Kingsman universe. I can do like make your like spy X-Men movies, you know?
Mm,
And he's like, I'm gonna jump to a prequel and I'm gonna set up this like future crossover between Kingsman. I'm gonna establish the Statesman in the sequel, and we're gonna get this thing going. And he's gonna lead the charge on, if not all of them, most of them, right?
mm.
And then he does the prequel, which gets it gets delayed because of COVID, but it also just like sucks, and like no one likes it, and everyone's like, did he want to make like a World War I drama, and then had to slap the Kingsman stuff onto it because it kind of feels that way, and that movie bombs. He still announces he's going to do Kingsman 3 and a sequel to the prequel, which they're never
Why?
going to
But
do because it didn't
what
make
is it?
money.
It's so crazy how big Mark Miller was at a certain point that like people were like, we could do a competing cinematic universe based on his stuff that are essentially riffs on established universes, right? Like
Mhm.
that people like were like they've tried it so many times. Like
Yeah, I
there was
don't know
there was even
why.
like Jupiter's Legacy for Netflix, which like came out and like was out for like an hour, and Netflix was like, we've already given up. Like whatever numbers were coming in for that, it was so quick, even though they were like, this is the beginning of a shared universe that Mark Miller's going to oversee. And that thing was out for like 30 seconds, and they were like, well, no, like it didn't work. But I think there is something Mark Miller though being just one of those guys where like everyone being like he's doing satire, and then it's like, oh no, he kind of does believe some of this stuff.
Yeah, like he's a
But
big Brexit guy. I don't know
yeah,
if you know
like
that. He's not been
well,
shy
I
about it. So
yeah, and I think Vaughn has also come out as like kind of libertarian-ish, like so.
yeah,
Um,
like at the time, like when he blows up Obama's head in the first Kingsman, it's like, oh, like how what a wacky satire.
mhm,
And then now it's like, ooh, uh, a little pointed
mhm.
considering how he handles women and characters of color.
Yeah. I think I've told this story on the show. First of all, Kingsman was a movie I was really enjoying until the head explosions, because all the head explosions were so fucking lame. And it was also in that period before Force Awakens where I would read Mark Hamill is in a movie and I would get excited because I'm like, Mark Hamill's an incredible character actor. I can't wait to see him. And he's like got maybe 3 lines in the movie, and is just totally wasted.
Yeah.
But then I'm in the theater watching it, and Kingsman has that awful sex joke it ends on, the first one.
Oh
You know
yeah.
what? You know what I'm talking. And like a parody of a frat bro 3 rows in front of me is now laughing like comedy was invented in front of him. And
Jesus
it
Christ.
was one of those things where like I was like, I will never watch this movie ever again. Like I just it was enough to break like that. If that guy finds it enjoyable, I can't find this enjoyable. Like it was just a moment where that happened. So
Drew Hunter mentioned the Kingsman Argyle cinematic universe, which I did hear about. That Argyle has a
yeah.
post credit scene where Argyle's real and also a Kingsman, which like see, that's he still tried to make it happen, and that movie isn't getting a sequel. Um, uh, Jack wants to know what we thought of Layer Cake. I remember liking Layer Cake, but I also haven't seen it since like 2012.
Layer
Because
Cake, I remember
yeah,
being one of those movies I watched after seeing Casino Royale and just being like, fine.
because the friend that showed it to me we were gonna go watch an early showing of Skyfall like later that night. So there was a group of us that went together, and my friend was like, "Oh, this is the movie that got Daniel Craig James Bond," and I was like, "Oh, really?" And then I remember liking it, but also like, I saw Skyfall later that night and being like fucking like the other
Yeah.
movies left my brain for like a week.
I think there was a moment though where Casino Royale came out and it was just like anything Daniel Craig had been in was suddenly elevated. Like Casino Royale hit so hard
Tomb
that
Raider.
we were just like, yeah, like I like even that, like there was something to being like, it's so weird that he's like third build in fucking Munich, like shit like that, where like you look back and like, or Road to Perdition, like he's got a really weird supporting role in that movie. And then so like I think Layer Cake that kept it relevant, and then but like yeah, I don't think I'll ever watch Layer Cake again. Maybe it's good, maybe it's worth checking out. But
Jack mentions he remembers the ending to I presume Kingsman very vividly because they watched it with my mom. He said, 'Cause
mm.
Jack's British. That's how they talk.
Why do
Master
you do
Jedi.
that, British people? What is that about? What? Just say mom.
It,
What's
it's
what's what,
uh,
what's the
it's to
mum?
establish dominance against their American counterparts. Master
It does.
Jedi
It's
Duck.
not working. I see why we won the revolution now. I see why every nation that rebelled against the British rule won. I can see why all of them in order won.
Well, they're just
So
that island, once everyone figured that out, it's like, oh, well, they're not so intimidating.
maybe that's why Mark Miller is so pro Brexit. Like that, it's just like he's like, yeah, I just want to be an island where no one can bother me.
I
But
mean, maybe that is a very conservative idea.
but
Master Jedi Duck said society is almost free of Mark Millar's grip. Sweet, sweet liberation. Yeah, I don't think he's getting stuff greenlit anymore. I know they're still trying to make that Nemesis movie.
is he
That's probably
even
dead in the water.
writing comics anymore? Like I just
I
like
don't think
is
so.
the comic book industry is so weird right now too. Like in terms of the like direct to like the actual comic industry.
Hmm.
I was reading something about how bad the sales have gotten for Marvel and DC, but that the indie sales have like shot up significantly. Like that indie and manga are like dominating so hard right now, like which is fascinating. Don't know what that means, but kids still want to read that shit. It's
Yeah,
just someone
I
selling it. Maybe
people need
someone is
coverage.
selling a substar product, a substandard product. But
Yeah. Shout out to the great Richard Newby, friend of the show, friend of me, and excellent critical writer. Even when I disagree, he's got a point of view that I always find so intriguing. But he
that's the
he
meanest
always
thing Diego will say about you is that he brings up that he disagrees with your opinion occasionally.
no, I mean he's one of the guys who helped get me on the BVS train. But he always updates me on the horrific like 616 Spider-Man happenings because I don't read that
Mm,
shit, right? I mentioned before, like I read the new Ultimate Spider-Man by Jonathan Hickman, which is terrific and is the best-selling Marvel comic right now, I think.
mhm.
Because people like when they can hop on to a new story without having to read 3,000 other stories.
Yeah,
But yeah, Richard will just send me updates like, yeah, they're doing this shit now, and I'm like, this is the worst thing I've ever heard. Like they're bringing Gwen Stacy back. He just sent me yesterday. It's like maybe
I
look,
I think we're
whatever.
just like not to. It's one of these things where I guess it makes enough money for someone somewhere that they'll never stop. But I think we're just at a point where like this sort of ongoing comic book thing is done. Like
Mhm.
we just don't really want to do it anymore. Like I don't
Yeah.
like the monthly release of a bunch of comics is just not the thing people want to read anymore.
Yeah, it
And
has to be very special. Like I
yeah,
haven't read the other Ultimate stuff, but from what I hear, like they got
well, it's
like
got to be.
real people, talented people on them, and it looks right now like it's working. Like they'll
It's
probably
got to
suck it
be.
dry, but
Yeah, well, here's the thing. Same thing happened with the Ultimate Universe initially, where like it was this great jumping on point. I mean, I do I, ha- yeah, my I can't reach it, but there's a stack of Ultimate Spider-Man trade paperbacks, which like I read as they came out because it was like this good jump because the movies had just come out and I was just getting into it and it was really accessible. And then whenever they hit a beat in it, I could look up what it was based on in the initial run of Spider-Man and go like, oh, okay, so now these are those stories that I have enough context for, thanks to Ultimate Spider-Man, that I can understand them without knowing the 30 plus years of backstory going on, and and then they ran the same thing dry. Like they did the exact same thing, and it'll probably happen with the Ultimate Universe. I just don't understand. But like I said, I think at this point it's just they might want to start shifting towards a sort of contained story type thing, because I think manga really works because it's like there's numbers on the volumes and a lot of them have definitive endings, and you don't have to worry about what's going on in 17 other manga series to know what's going on in one. So
I think it was George R. R. Martin. Yeah, George R. R. Martin like was asked about like if he would ever do a Marvel thing. This was like back when Game of Thrones started becoming like this fucking phenomenon on television, right? Because everyone always gets asked the Star Wars and the superhero question. That's all people do now. And he was honest and he was like, yeah, I would do like a Thor or like a Marvel universe story, but I would also want it to be mine. Like it would have to be a contained with story with a beginning, middle, and end, and then no one touches it after. And it's like I remember he got some criticism back then, but even back then, like 10 years ago or whatever, even then when I was like knee deep in all this shit, I was like, no, that makes sense. Yeah. Fucking Nolan did it and people still like those.
Yeah, wouldn't it make sense from a business perspective though, just to be like again, like imagine if you just went like George R. R. Martin's Thor, like on a comic book cover, like you're
$1 billion, like right there.
Yeah, you're gonna start breaking some, like just start putting these names on stuff. Like you got people that people like that they would want. My move, if I was Mr. Marvel or Mr. DC, I'd be starting getting some of the manga guys and just being like, hey, write like a really quick run on one of our series that's just independent and you can do whatever you want with it and just market it that way, like, you know, just to sell something. But it's the comic book industry is
failed
a mess.
Comic book industry.
Well, that was one we talked about. We have talked about in terms of another themed one, doing just superhero stuff, like in terms of possible discussion points. Because if there's any other genre that's more dead than fantasy in terms of inventive quality, it's superheroes at this point.
Yeah, that is the one I am really pushing to do.
I would. We now have so much ammunition too. Like we just now there's so much to talk about that it would be interesting. We could talk about so many different weird things that happened in the culture for a while.
I mean it's the last 15 years of cinema or Hollywood, anyways.
Yeah, and it's weird to get to the end of it and be like, how much of it doesn't actually have a lasting legacy? Like how much of it is just this thing that happened? And it is like a lot of those biblical epics from the 50s and 60s that like great directors did some of them and you don't know about those movies, right? Like you've never, like there are these movies that a lot of the great Western or even noir directors suddenly pivot to doing these like Roman epics, and none of them have had any lasting impact. So
yeah, that's a really interesting point, because even Spielberg, like everyone was saying like, oh, superhero movies are like the new Westerns, everyone's doing them. And it's like, I didn't ever really feel super comfortable with that description. And I think yours is better now. It's the biblical epic, because they're fucking the most expensive shit in the industry. They take up so much time, talent, and money. And
they're all
then
long
they're like gone
and bloated and full of like things that are to sell. Like the bloat is what is being sold to you. Like it's not even like the bloat is like a mistake. It's like you're being sold all this extra crap that has nothing beyond opening weekend in terms of its value. Now in like in those epics eras, it was the road show, like that the value of that bloat was a road show. But it's the same basic principle that they put a bunch of stuff in there for opening weekend, and then now when you're like 10 years removed from it, you're like, why is that an element of this movie now? Like what are these gags? What are these things that don't drive the plot forward in any capacity, but also don't add any character depth really?
It'd be like if they made the 10 Commandments, the Cecil B. DeMille one. I was looking it up. I didn't remember who directed it. And then they broke it up and like we're doing like the first commandment movie, the second commandment.
Oh God!
And
well, like, I mean, look,
we're bringing back Charlton Heston and the Exodus movie.
They didn't. Well, here's the thing. They didn't do that explicitly, but it is like, yes, 10 Commandments, but also there's Exodus, but also there is the greatest story ever told. Like there's all these movies that are also like Samson and Delilah, which I believe Cecil B. DeMille also directed. Like
I've
there's
not
suddenly
seen that one.
That's an actual good one. I will say
Okay.
that. I think that is like, it's better than the 10 Commandments in my opinion. But I think that's kind of like, people don't talk about the 10 Commandments that much anymore, right? Like people are
No,
like, we're kind of,
it was
uh,
big in my family,
yeah.
but it wasn't like, I knew it wasn't The Godfather.
Yeah, it's one of those where like it's an epic and people can quote it and you know the imagery from it, but it's also not like, oh, here's the actual value to it.
Hmm.
Other than maybe providing some context for Hail Caesar, but like
Yeah,
that's just
that's a
the
failed war
weird.
contender.
Which one is? I think it's the greatest story ever told that has John Wayne in it, which is wild to put John Wayne in a biblical epic. Um,
That is fucking wild.
truly, he is the son of God. He says something like that, and it's so funny. But yeah. So we're at this. It seems like we're at a weird tipping point, but also like that no one can stop themselves. So, uh, like we're like they haven't. I don't know. Because also now people just go. I don't think people see going to the movies as going to the movies anymore. It's like we're going to see the Marvel product. Like I think the movie experience has diminished so much that it'll there is a hungering for it, but no one has realized it yet.
Hmm.
In terms of both, like I think the Barbenheimer thing was the kind of signal that people deep down really do want it, but no one knows how to sell that because that would take actual creativity.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, they tried to make new versions of that. Like, oh, it's Saw and Paw Patrol. It's what Saw Patrol, I think that's what they called it. And it was
yeah,
like that died in like a week because that's not real. Like no one did that. Like it's a very specific thing. They're two very different movies, yeah, like Barbenheimer, but people were also going because it's like Barbie directed and written by Greta Gerwig and Oppenheimer
yeah,
directed by Christopher Nolan. It's like people do want to support these types of things. You just gotta keep presenting them properly. Jack mentioned the can't wait for the Meteor Man episode for the retrospective, and then it's very apt because so much like the Bible, people are very defensive over the canon and lore of texts they've never read. Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, I don't know if you remember this, Matt, but like way back, I think we did the BVS episode or Age of Ultron, like literally like one of the first things.
yeah,
And at the time, I was criticizing the Snyder DC people, of which I'm much more lukewarm on now because I like some of those. But
mhm,
you brought up the good point that like if the shoe was on the other foot of the DC and Marvel fans, if the roles were switched and the quality was inverted on which movies were good and bad, like they would have the same reactions. And
yeah,
I think that's never been more true than it is now, although it was also true then, obviously.
mhm,
But like some of the MCU diehards and like whatever, some of these kids are like fucking teenagers and shit, and they'll grow out of it. Like I'm not
well,
like angry about this, but
yeah,
there is a certain like, no, you don't understand. Like these movies, they're for the fans. Yeah, like the same arguments that we were hearing
yeah,
about different movies 10 years ago. The same stuff you hear about the Snyder cut before it was real, and then it's like, hey, that was actually pretty good.
yeah.
Like it's like, oh well, when they get to like the X-Men, like I'm starting to see that online now. It's like that means nothing. If that's
But
not
also,
real yet.
it's something where because it was the Pepsi to Marvel's Coke initially, that it became this like weird hotbed for like reactionaries, like that then
Mm,
have now pivoted to the MCU and are now pushing a lot of the narratives about the MCU not working because it's too woke, and like which it never was apparently.
mhm.
And I mean you're seeing that weird. It's such a weird thing right now where like people are angry about James Gunn's upcoming Superman because they still on some level want the Snyderverse back, not from that position some people have where it's like they want they want Snyder's like actual voice. Like some people genuinely like Snyder, but there are people who are like that it became a hammer you could hit a nail against in terms of like a culture war, and
Mhm.
that it's yeah, it would like that's so like the moment Marvel just objectively won in terms of like the cultural staying power, all those reactionaries just pivoted into the MCU discussion and have acted like they were always there. And
Yeah.
are guys that, and again, don't know the text. They don't actually know what they're talking about. And so, yeah.
Really quick, see you later, Drew. Thanks for stopping by. I hope you enjoy the rest
Drew
of the
left
episode.
like 5 minutes ago, so
Yeah,
it's way
but
too late.
I do want to, if he listens back to the rest of this, I want to make sure I shout him out because he's been a big supporter. But you know, to that point, like I have been morbidly curious about certain podcasters and like movie critics. I would like arguably critics. I don't know if I want to commit to that term for these people. But like just seeing where they are now, you know, because some people just never like change. They never changed their approach. They never got more curious. They became less curious of anything. And so I was really curious morbidly about like some reactions to Captain America Brave New World. And I checked in on someone I used to listen to. They had a bigger platform, and because I know this guy is definitely more centrist, and I was like, let me see, because he's definitely representative of a certain type of nerd. And he was like reading other reviews of, he wasn't like angry about Brave New World, he just thought it was okay, right? But he was reading reviews, and the moment someone mentioned that, like, oh, this movie wasn't so great because with all this political context with the Captain America character, and this movie is a political thriller allegedly, it seems to have very little politics. And he was like, yeah, these people are reading too much into it. And he moved on to the next thing. And it's like, well, no, like that's something that should be talked about with any movie, because every work of art is political in its own way. And it wasn't even a bummer. It was just like, yeah, no, this person didn't change. And then I just moved on.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was interesting. Like some people really have like grown a lot, especially like people we know in these spaces, and they've like, you know, challenged themselves or become more curious about certain things. And just like, yeah, some of these grifters, like just outright grifters, just they're just going to be stuck there forever.
There's an ecosystem built for them. Our connection is getting very choppy right now. I don't know what everyone else is seeing.
Okay.
So
yours,
but we were at the end
just
anyway,
became a little choppy for a second.
Right. Well,
so.
we're at the end anyway. So
yeah.
Thanks for stopping by, everyone.
Yeah, thank you for checking this out. This will obviously go up on SoundCloud and everything, so thanks if you listen there. I hope the quality was good on this, and I hope it wasn't too choppy. But yeah, well, you know what, yeah, I'm gonna start spamming these announcements on the Waffle Press, on Blue Sky. I'll even hop on the Discord. Next Thursday we're doing the Lord of the Rings trilogy live stream, extended
12
editions.
hours of, if you've ever wanted to hear us babble for 12 hours and probably go insane, then tune in next Thursday. Perfect time of the week to do it.
Yeah, Thursday the 27th. That's, yeah, we got this. We got this. I'll have a lot of coffee. I will actually have a lot of coffee. But Matt, thanks for stopping by, for doing this again. It's always super fun to do this with you. And yeah, we'll see what the future holds for these for the next season of the retrospectives. Well, we're probably going to do more of these.
Stay tuned, true believers.
Yes.
And I brought a whole stack of things. I just want to hype this. I brought a whole stack of things I was going to use for this episode, but I didn't get to any of them, so I'm going to save them for the Lord of the Rings episode. So
fantastic. Yeah, we're going to need other topics to talk about.
So, all right. So,
all right.
peace,
goodbye, everyone. We've been professionally